All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. The Twiggs County Board of Education meeting is now called to order. Today is Tuesday, July the 14th, and the time is 6:05 p.m. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and the moment of silence. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you. You may be seated. Okay. All right. I entertain a motion from the floor to approve the agenda for tonight's meeting, July the 14th, 2020. Is there a motion to approve our agenda?
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the agenda for tonight's meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Rouse. Is there a second?
Second that motion.
Thank you. The motion has been made by Mr. Rouse and seconded by Mr. Harris to approve the agenda of tonight's meeting. Is there any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all in favor for approving the agenda for tonight's meeting, please answer by saying yes.
Yes.
Mr. Basley, can you unmute Ms. Stokes?
And Mr. Harris, you say yes as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Ms. Stokes, would you state your vote, please? Ms. Stokes, are you voting for the agenda? Nod yes or no. Thank you.
Okay. You see, I don't see her. I don't see her. I just see her letter. So I don't see her.
Yes, yes.
You can see her. All right. So that vote carries. That motion carries. Mr. Rouse, Mr. Harris, Ms. Stokes, and myself. That motion carries. Thank you for that. All right. Our next item on the agenda will be the approval of minutes for our June the 23rd, 2020 BOE work session. Is there a motion to approve those minutes?
Ms. Stokes made the motion.
Okay, the motion's been made by Ms. Stokes to approve the minutes of our June the 23rd meeting. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Rouse. Is there any discussion? Okay, all in favor, please answer by visual or verbal answer.
All in the affirmative.
All in the affirmative. All right, thank you. That motion carries. Thank you for that. I'm unable to see everyone. Okay, our next will be the ethics statement, and I don't see Ms. Blackshear on yet, so I'll just kind of muddle through this one. She usually does it for us, but we, as a Board of Education, we have taken the oath, and we swear to act in accordance with the laws and above board and ethically. And does anyone have any conflict of interest on our agenda that we have approved this evening? Hearing none, I'm going to move on and we'll proceed. Our next thing, Mr. Dixon, do you have any comments to give us?
Well, thank you, Madam Chair and Mr. Vice Chair and fellow board members. As we're in this time of pandemic, we're still planning to educate the boys and girls of Twiggs County. Our executive team we've been meeting regularly, making plans, trying to get ready to open up the 2020-2021 school year. We're making plans. It's an exciting time as we have two new principals. They're innovative ideas. So it's been a great time to have the team together. We have been meeting each Thursday. We call it Thunder on Thursday, Cobra Talk. And we have been meeting at 6 o'clock on each Thursday, just updating the community on what's happening as it relates to any information that we're receiving from the state. I was on a conference call with all of the superintendents from across the state of Georgia on Monday morning with Governor Kemp and as well as Superintendent Woods. And they unfolded some information to us on Monday. We are meeting with educators across the state, and everyone is struggling with some of the same issues that we are struggling with at this time. And so we're going to make it to land safely. We're all out in the water right now, but we'll make it to land safely if we stay on board. I appreciate what you all do, and thank you for what you do.
Okay. Thank you for that, Mr. Dixon. And with that being said, we're going to move on to our business agenda. And the first item on our business agenda is an information item, and this is the work calendars. Mr. Dixon.
Yes, ma'am. For information purposes, Madam Chair, we do presenting our work calendars that we have. Mr. Basley, I don't know if you have access to our work calendars. If you do, I would ask that you could flash that up if you do. If not, if Ms. Tina is on with us, if one of you guys could flash that up, that would be helpful at this time. But our work calendar for information purposes just have the number of days that each department will work, whether you are a principal, whether you are a teacher, whether you are a band director, whether you are a counselor, and it just gives the number of days when you start to work, when you end work. And it's for informational purposes so that if there's any questions that anyone should ask you, you would have that. And that's based on a full calendar year. It is up on our screen, and I will entertain any questions that you all might have concerning that. It's based on 190 days, 10 months, 181 day. Some of our lunchroom staff that works that calendar, 185 days for our lunchroom managers, 190-day calendars that our paraprofessionals, our school nurse and pre-K teachers and paraprofessionals work, 216-day that some of our secretary works, and 226-day that our some of our 12-month employees work. And those are outlined in those categories.
Okay.
And just kind of gives you the outline of when our holidays are and when system close days are.
All right. Thank you. Does anyone, the board, have any questions about that?
It goes along with the calendar that you approved for 2020-21.
No questions from me.
Okay. Okay. Hearing none, we're going to move on. Do you have anything else to share about that, Mr. Dixon?
Madam Chair, at this time, that would be the only thing that I would have at that time.
On this. Okay. All right. With that being said, we're going to move on to our next item, which is also an information item. And this is our GADOE update.
Madam Chair, our Godot update, as I stated earlier, that I was on a conference call with Superintendent Wood and the governor. It was a joint call on Monday, and the information was that there's an expectation that we do have school. How we have school is a local decision, and so we do have a plan that we will unfold later on our agenda on tonight. So we're planning to educate the boys and girls of Twiggs County.
Okay. Anything else? Any questions about that at this time, or anything else to say at this time?
No.
Okay. All right. So we're going to move on. And the next item is an action item, and Ms. Stanley is going to present. And this regards our school meals.
Ms. Stanley.
See her on.
Okay, well, I'll step in for Ms. Stanley. Basically, what it relates to with our school meals is that we wanted to make sure that the board was aware and would approve that with our virtual program, that if we had a partial virtual program, that we would serve our kids who were being served virtually at home, that you would be in support of us serving our school nutrition program in some form of those students that are being served at home. So depending upon what you approve later in our agenda, how we would serve those students, whether we would serve them daily or whether we would serve them once a week or whatever, we just needed to have your support that you are in support that we would be able to serve them. One of the reasons why we need to serve them, because if we did not serve them, then our count would go down drastically. And if our count went down drastically, that would affect employment of employees because our school nutrition funds all of our employees that we have within our new school nutrition program.
Okay, Mr. Dixon, this was written down as an action item, and we don't really have the specifics yet to take action. I just wonder what the recommendation for that would be and how we would
The
take
recommendation would be that if we go virtual, that we have board support to support our school nutrition program and serving our virtual students.
Okay, so our superintendent is recommending that we continue, and should we go with virtual, or the students that are going to have virtual learning to also be served lunches, and the plan is going to depend on exactly how we start school. But
Correct.
we do need to support serving those lunches for the students, whether they are in school, brick and mortar, or whether they are being at home with the virtual. So, and do we have anyone to make a motion to that effect? Is there a motion from the board for that?
I'll make that motion because the kids have got to be fed,
Okay.
whether they're in school or not.
Second.
Okay, Ms. Stokes has made the motion and Mr. Rouse has seconded the motion to support the serving of meals or lunches to our well, meal. It will be meal because it could be in the form of breakfast
Correct.
and lunch. And of course, the plan is going to be worked out according to how the plan of school starts. So Ms. Stokes has made the motion, and this Mr. Rouse has seconded the motion. Is there any discussion? Okay. All in favor? I can actually see you all now. So all in favor, you can either say yes or raise your hand if you're if all in favor.
Yes.
Okay. All right. That's 2 for yes. Mr. Harris, what say you? I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
I'm sorry. I oppose at this time.
You're opposing. Okay. I'm going to say yes with that to carry that vote. I am very interested in what the plan is going to be and the specifics once we get the plan down. But I do certainly support serving meals in some fashion to our virtual students.
Well, I'm interested in the plan, but I also know that the children got to be fed. So
I agree with
how the plan is, that don't have any bearing on whether we're gonna feed them or not. So
right.
that was my take on that. Why I say yes.
Yes. All right. Thank you, Mr. Rouse. So that motion carries. So we're going to move on to our next action item, and this is the student online platform.
Madam Chair, I will have Ms. Reardon to come forward to present to us concerning our student online platform that we've been spending some time looking at this time.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Vice Chair, board members, and stakeholders. Mr. Basley, do you have the presentation to put up? I think I can share my screen if I need to.
I got it.
Oh, he's good.
Okay, thank you. We have looked at Edgenuity. It's virtual courses aligned to Georgia standards, and it's supported by professionally qualified teachers. That's the platform that we are looking at with virtual learning. In grades 6 through 12, we have courses in all content areas aligned to Georgia standards. The courses for the milestones and subjects. Of course, a waiver has been requested to waive testing for the milestones. There are courses that cover the national test prep courses such as SAT, ACT, Accuplacer, ASVAB. That's not something we've normally offered, but it is something that we can offer through Edgenuity. We have foreign language courses. There are elective courses. We have CTAE courses. There are advanced placement courses. Remediation and enrichment options are embedded within the courses that we have. We have credit recovery options as well through Edgenuity. It aligns with our STAR data that we've been utilizing to provide a way to fill in gaps for students who have gaps from learning in the past and gaps that we may discover as a result of being outside of the school setting for so long. Mm-hmm. On the elementary side, we have through Edgenuity, it's called PathBlazer. It's a personalized learning for K through 5. It's based on a pre-assessment for reading and math. It's personalized instruction. It has fun, motivating content. It builds foundational skills in math and ELA. It uses our STAR data or we can use results from the program itself through Edgenuity in a pre-test format to provide targeted instruction, and it provides a way to accelerate the students to grade level instruction, and then we can accelerate those who are ready to move on as well. Teachers have the power to monitor learning and to maximize results through this program. We also have through Edgenuity what's called Odyssey, which is the science and social studies curriculum for grades K through 5. Edgenuity has plans for exceptional learners. It has a support module for accommodations and modifications with guidance to utilize these and with our IEP terminology that we already have and those expectations. The program can be completely controlled by a classroom teacher or the exceptional learning teacher, anyone who has the authority to do that to meet the needs of those exceptional learners. We can change the order of the assignments, the number of the assignments, the length of the assignments. It can be changed for each student according to their IEP. Also, we have a plan in place for virtual learning to utilize all of our resources, our current resources, in addition to purchasing Edgenuity. We, of course, will be utilizing our Google Classroom. That will be our springboard platform. Everything is going to run from Google Classroom. We can utilize everything that we have with Educational Epiphany, our Reading Street curriculum, our Haggerty curriculum that we already have for phonemic awareness, our secret stories for phonemic awareness, any teacher resources, things that teachers have put together in the past, PowerPoint presentations, recordings of themselves teaching, that can also be utilized. The Edgenuity platform already utilizes the gradual release of responsibility strategy for instruction, the I do, we do, you do model, and that is something that we have been utilizing due to Educational Epiphany for quite some time now. And the Edgenuity models itself after that, and that's what we also plan to go forth with no matter what instruction we're doing in front of the students. Of course, nothing replaces a live teacher, and our teachers are our greatest asset. They are our greatest resource, and we will utilize their expertise as we endeavor to teach our students in the way that best reaches our students in Twiggs County. Included in the program, I have a sample schedule that's up here that they have some sample schedules that parents may utilize at home, something that we can utilize in the school setting as well. Then we have some additional expectations that we've put in place, that all students will be held to our attendance expectations, with attendance being taken through Google Classroom and their platform logins. Edgenuity tracks their daily work, what day they log in, the time that they log in, the time on task by each student. It also tells them how long it's going to take to complete a particular assignment or to complete a particular lesson. The students are not required to be sitting in front of a computer all day long with Edgenuity, and that's not what we're going to require with our virtual learning platform. There are times for breaks, small group instruction, for practice, for individual assistance. Those are things that we're putting in place with our plan that we are putting together for virtual learning. Students will be assigned their courses based on their course needs, just like in regular school, whatever track they are on, what kinds of courses come next in the program of study that they have. Grades will be weighted within the Edgenuity platform if we choose to go with that, as well as whatever way we utilize to present our virtual learning. Our grades will be weighted according to the handbook, just like we've always done. The students will be expected to do their own work, of course, and to abide by the policies, procedures, and expectations that we have set forth in our handbook. Along with this, we're going to, we have put in place some plans for professional learning. we want our teachers to be well prepared to engage and interact with our students in a virtual learning environment in the most meaningful way possible. We want them to feel comfortable with whatever setting we go with, whatever plan that we have. Edgenuity itself includes 6 sessions of professional learning, 3 for elementary, 3 for the middle and high school together, because they use the same style of program. That's why they would be together. They would have the training to let them know, how to maneuver the platform, all the resources that are available to them, how to set it up for the students, how to answer questions. All of that's going to be presented to them. They are also going to have the opportunity to integrate with all of our resources. So especially our new teachers coming in, we've got some professional learning that we need to do for them to prepare them as we move forward, so that we can have all of these things in our learning experience for our students in Twiggs County. We'll make sure that teachers have the high quality professional development that they deserve, and that our educators have everything that they need to teach our implementation goals and to support our students to maximize achievement. We will provide professional development locally in addition to what Edgenuity will do. And there are some opportunities through Middle Georgia RESA, because they also see the need for preparing teachers in the Middle Georgia area for a virtual learning experience. So as we move forward, we want to be open to the new ideas. We need to be flexible, and we need to keep true to what works for us here in Twiggs County for our students in Twiggs County. We may look at some things that other districts are doing, but in the end, it's what is important to reach the students of Twiggs County that is at the forefront of everything that we are doing. Are there any questions?
Yes. Who is going to be deciding on what courses the high school kids are going to be taking this year?
That's done in the same way that we've always put together courses. The counselor would be sitting down with the students to determine, what comes next in their course of study, what comes next for their plans. They should have already been going through the advisement. I believe that was done before
we went out.
Say that again, sir.
Before we went out.
Yes, sir. That was done. I think it was back in February when January and February when Dr. Foster began to sit down with the high school students to work that out.
Well, I know my 2 grandsons does not know what was predicted that they supposed to be taking. And I had trouble last year with the oldest one. They had him down for 2 gym periods and had to get in music, and he did not select neither one of them items.
That would be something we would need to discuss with Dr. Foster to see what options that they had in front of them that would fit the schedule that they needed.
So when can a parent go down there and talk to Dr. Foster about this?
I will get you the
I believe. Go ahead, Mr. Dixon.
I will get you the contact information, so we can go ahead and get the contact information so that we can have that information. As a matter of fact, I can give the principal's contact information, and he can get you into contact with Dr. Foster contact right now, as we can provide that for Dr. Foster. That contact number for Dr. Foster is 478-456-5017. 478-456-5017. We also have a grasp counselor, Arade Perry, and that number for him (478-919-3791). 778-919-3791. And I'm giving these numbers simply because of the fact that we may be in the building or out of the building. And I know that Dr. Foster will return her calls and get on.
Okay.
Okay, I have a question about Edgenuity.
Yes, ma'am.
I see in the packet that the team is recommending Edgenuity. So you're recommending just Edgenuity, not in addition with the other two listed of the Board Works Education and the PLP.
We were talking about those are the other programs that we did look at.
Available. Okay.
To know that we did look at other programs.
Right. So you're recommending just the Edgenuity. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
That
Yes,
answers my question.
though
Thank you.
we did look at POP and Board Works, but as we're looking at it, we did, and we did have our entire administrative team involved in the process, and we feel like this is probably what best fits us as Twiggs County. Several neighboring counties are also using this program. I've looked at several other districts that are similar to us that are also going to be utilizing this also.
And Mr. Dickinson or Miss Reardon, whoever can answer this, who is this program for? Say if we did have to go to a complete virtual environment, would this encompass every student that we have? Does it matter how many students we put on this program?
Absolutely.
That's correct.
It would cover every student in our system.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And one of the things that I would like to say about this is that our goal is that we will utilize this program to address every scholar that we have. So irregardless, everyone will be familiar with the program. So if and when we have to transition to it, everyone is familiar with it.
Already have. Okay. All right. That answers my question. All right. Does anyone else from the board have any other questions?
How many students are allowed in the classroom if they're coming to school?
Well, that will depend upon space and how many students that we have in a particular grade level that have selected brick and mortar and how many have selected to stay at home. So right now, the last survey that we did, we had about 52% that was saying that they would stay at home, and about 48% that was saying that they were going to come to school, but that was only out of about 400 plus survey responses.
Okay. Are we going to have an open house this year?
At this time, the governor is recommending no large groups.
Okay.
We intend to offer something virtually, for everyone to get to know the teacher and to get to know what's going on in the classroom.
Okay.
Okay. Does anyone else have any other questions?
I think it's important that we do say this to our community, that things have changed. And there the days that we will be able to walk down the hallways, hold our kids' hand, walk down to the classroom, that day is kind of gone right now. But we will do everything that we can to make sure that you have that experience of that first day of school, and make sure that we capture every moment that we can capture with every bit of equipment that we have to make sure that you have those experiences. But just know that we're in different times right now, and COVID-19 is dictating a lot of what we can do and what we can't do. But Madam Chair, if there are no other questions, but we will entertain if there are. Mr. Harris, do you have any questions? Mr. Ralph?
All right. Mr. Dixon, what is your recommendation? I think I've heard it, but go ahead and say your recommendation.
After some deep study, I was very When I first heard about the program, I was under the impression that the program would totally take the place of a teacher. After further investigation, it does not. So my mindset had to change as to how we would utilize the program and how it would. Once I got the great understanding of it and we put a plan in place of how we would make it work for our kids, my recommendation will be that we would go with Edgenuity.
All right. You've heard Ms. Reardon's presentation and you've heard our superintendent's recommendation. Is there a motion of from the board to go with our Edgenuity for the according to the presentation?
Madam Chair, I make that motion.
Okay, the motion has been made by Mr. Rouse. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Stokes. Is there any further discussion? All right. All in favor, please either say yes or raise your hands.
Yes.
Okay, and I vote yes for that. So that motion carries, Mr. Dixon.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
None opposed. All right, our next item is going along with our virtual application, and Mr. Dixon, that's an information item.
Okay. Madam Chair, we have spent endless hours trying to come up with a good plan as our board approved a start date of school for August the 3rd that we have talked about on several occasions. But with COVID-19 it's just caused us to have some sleepless nights in regards to what we would do, when we would do it, how we would do it. My administrative team, we've spent some time together with us approving our online platform. We will need some time for professional development. With our numbers increasing within our county, within the counties from where our staff reside, basically Lawrence County, Houston County, and Bibb County, that's a grave concern for us as well. We would like to look at the possibility of starting virtually for our first 9 weeks, where everyone will be involved in starting virtually as our reentry to school. And our start date, looking at August the 17th. Our staff would return on the date originally planned for July 29th. And we will start with our professional development at that time and getting acclimated back. And we would be in the building, but we will be working in our classrooms, and our meetings and things that we would do virtually in our classroom. We would not be coming into group meetings to meet together. There will be some things that we would do where we would try, and if it did not call for us to be in a large group, we would not be in a large group. There may be some modified schedules up until that time to try to minimize us being together as much as possible. But that would be part of this recommendation. We've given you our virtual learning plan. Our new staff orientation would start on July 27th. That would be on a Monday. We've heard the president very clear. We've heard the Secretary of Education very clearly. The governor wants us to start school, and we have a civic responsibility to educate our scholars of Twiggs County. Our second recommendation would be, if we don't start on the 17th, start on the 24th. The third recommendation would be, if not on the 17th or the 24th, that we would start possibly after Labor Day. What does this mean? professional development to start up. We will front load our teachers with Edgenuity and how we will roll out our Google Classrooms and other online learning needs. This is going to be important because everyone will become a virtual teacher. Everyone will become a virtual teacher. Then as we transition back, we will evaluate it. This board will evaluate it, and we will see where we are, what is COVID doing, how we are doing, to determine when we will try to transition into brick and mortar. So our parapros will be involved in this professional development. They have to learn the platform as well. Our custodians will be involved if we're in the building with cleaning the buildings and keeping it going. Our lunchroom staff will be serving our students virtually and going out and preparing the meals for them. It will be a little different as opposed to this summer. We did not have to provide rosters of who was receiving the meals. As long as they were under 18, we could serve them with a meal. But now we have to have a name attached to the meal that we do give out. We will also serve, this is maybe some of the information that you all might would like to have heard earlier. These meals will be hot meals when possible. Such things as chicken sandwiches, hamburgers, pizza, but it will still be things that are prepackaged. So as we're looking forward with that, we will utilize all of the resources that we have already purchased to make sure that we are offering a total educational program. Even we will be utilizing small group instruction, differentiation of instruction, remediation and enrichment. Every teacher will be trained to teach virtually. We haven't abandoned Dr. Dickey and his program and his training that he have given us. So if we go with the option of blended and some students doing virtual, some doing traditional, all instruction will look the same for all of our students. You're not going to be slighted for choosing one way or the other if and when we have the option of blended learning. So as we think in terms of that, we would like to try it for 9 weeks, evaluate it, see where we are, and then reconsider a plan to move forward. So Madam Chair, that's where we are. And this is not a Dixon plan, but this is our administrative team plan. And we have spent endless hours together to come up with this plan. And I will entertain safety being our #1 priority for our students, first of all, and then our staff.
Okay, so I want to make sure I understand. So no students in the building at all for 9 weeks. Is that what you're saying?
That's correct.
So that would be for the month of, and if you're not starting until August, that would be, so not until pretty much after almost Thanksgiving. You're talking about in November. Is that about the 9 weeks?
About middle of October.
Middle of October. So yeah, August, September. Okay, right, about middle of October.
Yes, ma'am.
And then everybody would start with virtual school, and the virtual school would not start until either the 17th, 24th, or until after Labor Day.
17th is my preference.
Okay. All right. I would just tell you the concerns I've heard from the community, and I'd like to voice them because these are the concerns. Of course, our safety is the #1 thing. I mean, when we first started, we all thought that the heat would kind of kill this out and it would be over, and obviously it hasn't. So as the number of cases of COVID-19 continue to rise, we have to keep that into consideration. But we do have some parents who are single parents, who are both parents working, and they don't have the luxury or the option of any kind of daycare. I'm certainly not saying that the school is a daycare. We are not daycares for children, but we do have parents who don't have options of what to do. I mean, with that. So what has your committee said about that kind of thing, about those kinds of questions?
And actually, Mr. Basley, if you could put Ms. Jenkins and some of the administrative team in, so we could have this discussion, so the board can kind of hear, some of the discussion that we've had. Ms. Boston, Ms. Reardon, let them be able to chime in.
Well, with that, we did take that into consideration, of course, because we knew with parents that would be an issue. But it's so many moving pieces. Even though that was an issue, it was kind of one that, I mean, if we don't put it that way, it was going to be other questions asking other things.
Right.
So it was kind of like we had to just take a stance. We didn't fully agree with it because we know it's going to be an inconvenience for some parents. But then just thinking that, if we do expose kids to this and then it affects even more, we still will be in a bind. So it was kind of, do we wait and see if something tragic happens, or do we try to be proactive and come up with that decision first?
Ms. Jenkins, as you remember in the discussion.
And we share the same sentiments with families. We have kids as well. My kids are in the system, and we're contending with the same thing, with the multiple family income and people being out and about. But I will say that we had to consider safety. And with the rising numbers and the surveys and all the things and surveys from our staff as well as our families, it's very challenging for us to say that we would close our doors for 9 weeks, but we want to ensure safety. And we want to make sure that our kids are educated. And the best way to kind of move forward without, having a lot of angst in our community was to say that for 9 weeks, we will have a online platform for learning where our students can still engage, but can still remain safe.
I don't know if Ms. Boston or Ms. Reardon.
Mr. Bacon.
Yeah, Mr. Bacon.
I think the district is in the facility and is making as many preparations as possible. And I'd like to reiterate what Mr. Harris said. We just got new guidelines from the governor and Dr. Toomey on yesterday. And that changes a lot of the things and protocols we wrote going into this. So not only are there a lot of moving parts, but a lot of the things that everyone is requesting aren't even available for us. Hand sanitizer is still hard to get. Hand sanitation stations are still very difficult for us to get. They're on the way. Making sure that all these preparations are in effect and keep up with the CDC guidelines. And even Ms. Stokes asked a question, well, how many kids are you going to have in the classroom? Well, that changed from the first time that we wrote a protocol to a week ago to like I talked to Mr. Dixon to this morning when we talked to the leadership team. So there is constantly changing. And that's the fear that we all have of the constantly moving targets that we have of what is safety. I want to be at the highest, most stringent level before I bring a child in, because if a child gets sick on our watch, I want to be able to tell a parent absolutely did everything that we knew to do, and it was the best decision at the time. I don't know what the best decision is at the time right now because it changes so often, so frequently, and getting the things in that we want. Just to give you an example, the district has invested in 32 digital thermometers. 6 weeks ago, the digital thermometers were $15. The district paid $75 per thermometer, and that's from RISA, because these things are now being priced. Everybody's looking for them. So I just want to say that we're moving in the right direction. I feel comfortable And I know that it's a lot of angst with what do I do with my children, but we got to keep them safe, and we got to know what safe is. And that's very difficult, been very difficult for me and my staff as we're training, and the district has been making those heavy investments with CARES Act money, with budget money, to make sure. So I think that moving target is what's got us all afraid. We can't say, okay, we have enough or we made the right decision, because that's changing as we go.
And I guess the most frightening thing about, we put protocols in place of checking the temperatures as soon as you get into the building, and the protocols that you put in are still not good enough, because you can still become affected by the virus and not have a fever. Kids will try to do what you tell them to do, some of them, but we have no control over what kids do when they leave us. Beyond that, how do we transport them? How do we get them to the school? It's a lot of unknowns in with that. It is a very difficult, because I was one of those kids that didn't have anywhere else to go. School was my safe haven. So this is not gone without a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. I think Ms. Jenkins probably was the last one to get on board with. Well, I think Ms. Jenkins and I both, we're ready for the kids, but I'm just not ready for. I just don't know if we're ready to handle the what ifs.
Will the bus driver have to take the child's temperature before they get to school?
We're thinking in terms of who we're going to put on that bus to assist that bus driver.
Oh, okay.
And I think, Mr. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, that is one of the things that we've been thinking through. If the bus driver, we want the temperatures checked at the bus stop, who would be that person to be there with that bus driver? So we've been thinking through that piece. We have our CNA students who have completed the CNA program or who are enrolled in that program. We looked at some other staff members who maybe could do that for a nominal fee to help us out. So we've left no stones unturned.
What if a child at the bus stop has a fever? What do? You leave the child? You can't leave the child there.
Can I answer that, Ms. Dixon?
Sure.
Well, in the current protocol, the protocols were broken up into 3 different areas, Mr. Rouse. And the first one is no to low, community spread, medium to moderate community spread, and substantial. So we would have 3 different things that we would do. The first thing is in the mediate to moderate, where we're checking the temperatures and we find the kid that we can't get home. But one thing is, we pretty much in the district carry kids door to door. We don't really have bus stops. We pretty much door to door. So our first thing would be to make that contact right then. The second thing is in our protocol, we put in an isolation seat. So the seat, the first seat to the right of the bus driver would be the isolation seat. The kid would put on a mask, and then we would take that kid, notify the school and Chief Waller that we have a kid whose temperature is high, and then they would be escorted into the building. But they would put on a mask, they would sit in that isolation seat all the way through the bus ride. So we did come up with a tentative protocol of how, because we know we couldn't leave the student, but we would leave that seat. So that seat would be when we had medium to moderate community spread, then we would go into making sure that isolation seat was available. And that was written into our first set of protocols. And then, of course, when it's substantial, we wouldn't be running buses at all. we would have to be shut down. So that was and those protocols were just changed recently. And like Mr. Dixon said, he and I talked about, okay, the bus driver is the first person to get on, is the first school employee at work. So who checks their temperature? You know, and we wrote up about self-assessment. You know, how do we self-assess and get that in time? So it was 1,000 little things that went into kind of just talking about it. But we would have an isolation seat for that student, and with a mask. And we weren't requiring masks. That's not required. But if you were in that situation, you would be putting on a mask. Mask would be available on the bus, and we would transport and then get that kid out of our custody as soon as possible.
So is there a protocol to where, at what point are you willing to say, okay, this is when we can bring students back into school? If this, and this happens, do we have that? And do we have it where we can be transparent and show the community as soon as we have these things happening? And it might not be perfect. It might change as time goes by. I understand that, because the situation is changing every day. But do we have, because if we look at it in 9 weeks and certain things have not happened and the situation hasn't gotten better, so do we have a protocol as to when we can start bringing students back into the school?
Well, Madam Chair, I apologize. I've been so focused on trying to open. That's really been our focus.
Mm-hmm.
What can we do to get school open?
Right.
And that has been our focus, because we would need to work on that piece. But we have got, my thing was, we had to get an online platform. We had to come up from the survey with our teachers. Our teachers are very nervous.
Yes, and I very understandably so. Very understandably so. Yes.
And so my thing was, let's get, and as a matter of fact, I did share with my administrative staff. I said, hey guys, we can't eat this whole elephant right now, but let's get school open and let's work through the pieces as much as we can. But if we can, that will be our next thing to do, is what are we expecting to look like for phase 2? We've got some things that we're knowing that we want to see. Certainly a decrease in the numbers would be part of phase 2. And definitely in 9 weeks, we are definitely hoping. We even looked at reevaluating at 4.5 weeks.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you wait a whole 9 weeks, what was that's what I was wondering, if you could evaluate in a shorter amount of time, and just to be able to do that. Because what if the situation, I'm not a fortune teller. I don't think it is going to get better. But what if in 4.5 or 5 weeks it does get better and the situation is drastically better? I don't know. I don't think that's going to happen, but should we be prepared just in case it does?
And I think the rationale behind that would have been that we would have just been maybe 2 weeks into our new platform and wanted teachers to have a real good opportunity to get into that. Because at some point in time, we feel like we're going to end up, because it's been stated that there will be another wave of COVID sometime later.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't know, but that's what projected.
Okay.
Also, some of the rationale going into the 9 weeks was also a grading period as well. Since without the confusion of teachers, trying to get themselves together and get on some type of schedule, we knew if we just said at an abrupt date, it would be hard for teachers to transcend from those grading periods. So that was another thing that went into that as well.
That makes sense, especially in middle and high school. Yes, sir, Mr. Harris. Thank you for that.
Yes, ma'am.
My suggestion is just to be very transparent with our public and our stakeholders, our parents, and let them know that this is why, this is what's going on. These are the constraints that we're having. That just hearing what you've explained tonight has made me, has really helped me understand more about it and more about the requirements that you have to be able to hold school and that kind of thing. So as long as we put that out for our public and out for our stakeholders to make sure they understand what's going on as well.
And one of the suggestions that our conference call on Monday was to continue to involve our Department of Public Health. And hopefully this week, I will have someone from Department of Public Health on our Thunder on Thursday Cobra Talk, 6 o'clock on Thursday. Someone from Public Health will be on to kind of reinforce and validate what we're saying.
Okay. Does anybody else have any other questions?
Mr. Dixon,
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Rainey, and board, I want to say that we are trying to be as transparent as we possibly can. Every time there's a new number that comes out, we are sitting down having a conversation about it.
Mm-hmm.
Decisions to make, because like Mr. Dixon said, we worked so hard to think about how to get everybody back in the building. And then as the numbers continue to rise and conversations were had here and there about coming back to school, it was a very hard decision to make. And I think that, as Mr. Dixon said, we'll continue to try to be transparent, but we still have to consider safety every time, all the time. And it is a very uncomfortable process to think 9 weeks without our students, but right now I don't see any other way.
And I think we need to say, this was not our first plan. Our first plan was to start August the 3rd, virtual and brick and mortar. That was our first plan.
Right.
We were going to jump in.
This was definitely last resort.
Yeah.
Definitely last resort.
And I think having those Thursday meetings, I am able to watch those. That is very helpful. And it's also helpful where parents and our other stakeholders can ask questions and just answer them right there. I think that is very helpful to answer those questions that people may have about that. Any other questions? All right, so that item on our agenda was that was an information item, and then the next is the start of school date. That is an action item.
And that was the impetus for the next item.
So you want to go ahead and start that one?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Well, Madam Chair, you've heard the discussion from the virtual application. As we've talked about it, it kind of leads into our reentry to school, our start of school date. So as we think in terms of that, I would like to hear what our board is thinking. You've heard my concerns about when I would like to bring my staff back in, what I would like to do. And I would like to hear from you all.
One question I have is, if the child does not have internet at their house or a computer, how is the child going to be able to do the schoolwork?
Good question, Ms. Stokes. Good question. We are more prepared this time than we were back in March. One of the things that we are prepared to do is to, for those families who are in need, we will provide those families with a computer. We will not provide every child with a computer, but we will provide a family with a computer. Secondly, we've connected with some resources that will provide low-income families with some low cost connectivity. So we're working on that as well as we will provide a family with some sort of connectivity.
Okay.
We're more prepared this time. And that's thank you for that question. This time will look nothing like March. It will look nothing like March. This will have more structure to it, and it will literally look like a school day. The accountability piece and everything.
Yes.
And once again, I'm just requesting that we keep in mind too, for parents who work all day and who cannot work on the work with their children until the nighttime. I'm hoping that we will give some flexibility in that area, because I do know parents who may have grandparents or may find a daycare to keep their children in the daytime, but they may not be able to help the child get finished with the work. And so the parents will be left with doing the work at night when they get home. And when that happens, it's not going to be in the same time as the virtual school. And I'm hoping that we can show flexibility in that area.
And hopefully, if that child is in a daycare or with a grandparent, that the accessibility will be there, because now, unlike before, we will have a teacher that is assisting with the program that will be able to provide some support as well. Because when grandma was just trying to do it on their own, or a parent was just trying to do it on their own, that would be trying.
That one. And I think Miss Blackshear I think she's listening in, and she has a question. Will the Wi-Fi buses that we've been having, will they be available to students in certain areas?
The Wi-Fi buses were that grant was for a particular moment of time, but I think it's going to be revisited again, and we may very well get those back again. I did hear some discussion about that as well, and that we were being targeted again.
Okay. All right. Mr. Harris, what's your question?
I don't have any at this time. Thank you.
Mr. Rouse?
I don't have any. It seems like they got it covered pretty well.
I'm going to ask Miss Blackshear, and let me see. Okay. Okay, Miss Blackshear doesn't have any other questions. So, and I think you've answered mine through the course of the discussion.
Okay. Well, Madam Chair, if so, I will seek approval for a revised school start date of August 17th, and that we will start virtually for the first 9 weeks, and that we will bring our staff in on the original start date of July 29th.
Okay, you've heard the presentations and our superintendent's recommendation. Is there a motion to approve the start date for August 17th?
Question, Mr. Dixon. You think your staff and the teachers will be up to date with the program in order to be able to be very effective within the next about 3 weeks?
And I will rely on my principals. We've had that discussion, and that was my last question to them, that as we sat in on the webinars, and we think that we can be ready. And Ms. Jenkins, do you think that we can be ready in 3 weeks?
Absolutely. And one of the things that we've done because of the great staff that we have, we've already showcased a lot of ingenuity to them with the anticipation and hopes that we would get this product. Many of them have already played around, just like Sarah was available to us last Thursday. She's been available to the staff. And so what's really going to happen when they come in is that we'll be more in sync. We'll work on blending all the pieces of learning that we have together so that it's an easier format. You heard Ms. Reardon talk about it being in Google Classroom initially. So to be in the Google Classroom, it'll tell them exactly what to do. So we'll just be fine tuning. That extra time with that time without the students will really, really help us prepare for our students to go online, and we'll be ready to answer those questions. And I'm sure we're going to be reaching out to some of those love families to ask them to log on and let us kind of play around a little bit so that we are, you know, we've encountered all the problems that could come when we do our real launch date.
And we've been very inclusive with this, probably more inclusive than we've ever been in trying to make sure that even with the start date, Mr. Rouse, because that was one of the things that I wanted to make sure that we did have enough time. So that's where we came up with those 3 different dates and came back to the date of the 17th.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
So virtual learning will start on the 17th.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay, and that is pending approval. So Mr. Dixon has made a recommendation for that, and I'm entertaining a motion to approve the start date for virtual learning for the first 9 weeks of school to start the students to start on August 17th.
Is this start date strictly for students? Because the original date that was read for the start date for staff was the 27th, and then Superintendent Dixon stated the 29th. Is it the 27th or the 29th for staff?
The 27th is for new hire staff. That's our new teacher orientation, and the 29th is our return date.
Understood.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the student start date for August the 17th?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, the motion's been made by Ms. Stokes. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Rouse. Is there any further discussion? Those all in favor, please let it be known.
Aye.
And Ms. Blackshear says yes, so that vote carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Dixon, for that. Then we do have item G, our business agenda. This is the last item before executive session, and that is the financial update. That will be Mr. Austin.
Good evening, board chair, board members, Superintendent Dixon, constituents of the community. If we can get the presentation shared, that would be great. And while that's coming up, we've been watching what the government and the stakeholders in that community has been doing. A lot of back and forth, a lot of different things has been transpiring. One of the things that we looked at originally as we kind of dived into our financial picture was a 14% cut. We got news that possibly that could go to 11%. So we was really hopeful and anticipating some good news when our reports came out. And Mr. Basley, you can scroll down a little bit here. When our reports came out, that we'll have some good news. But I know this is kind of small, so Mr. Basley, if you can go to two more so we can kind of, it'll be a summary right there. We actually was hit with a 17% cut. And we begin to wonder what happened. You know, why did the change of 2 to 3% come to our particular district? Did some comparative studies, and some districts had 8%, some had 10, some had 16, 14. There was a lot of different variables that went into this that we did not get a clear answer on. So as everything else, things has changed. And what has taken place is that in FY20, we had about 4.6 mil, a little 4 million in our state QBE. And that was reduced to about 3.3 million, which we had a $684,544 cut in our state funding. And the state funding consists of where our teachers are paid from, some of our central off staff, and where our students are funded at. So this is a very important revenue stream for the district. And so with that, this highlights kind of what the comparison would be from last year to this year. We've had continuously worked on some numbers. We have continuously looked at our outlook and kind of put some things together based upon priority and needs. And some of those needs we have been expressed by each director. We've taken those in consideration, and we have understood that we've been able to meet our priorities for operational needs, and still, you know, try to dictate what will look like instructionally. And we've been going through those scenarios as well. But before we move to kind of where we've came to, as far as our current outlook, I want to go back to the next slide here and review some of the options that we originally had on the table. So option one, when we looked at it, we considered a reduced calendar model, operational cuts, some savings from the salary allocation or attrition, and a supplement from the CARES Act. And we was able to come up to about 687,000 in that. All right, and save us some money there. One thing that has changed is that from operational standpoint, we have really looked at it, and some functions or some departments had more favorable conditions than others, which allowed us to see that some expectations had to be met because of PPE equipment, because of the nature of what's going on in our environment. Some things we could not compromise on, and which was important because the students' safety and instructional needs come first. And so we had to make sure those things were met. If we go to the next one. Option two consists of a 5-day calendar reduction, also operational cuts, salary allocation, and no CARES money. Again, operation cuts that differ, and the only thing that's different here is that we actually have more days added for reduced calendar model. Next slide. Option three would have considered no calendar cuts. Well, as far as reduction of calendar days, operational cut would have been considered. Everything pretty much the same, except for 100,000 would have been allocated to CARES. At this particular time, when we went through all these three options, you go to the next slide, Mr. Basley, we thought we had it pretty much together. And then we looked into one final option, which was having a $500,000 increase, operational cuts, no CARES, and based upon what our savings. And the reason why the attrition was so important, or the savings reallocation has been consistent in all options, was because one of the things that was in the original memo that came from the business and finance department was to minimize hiring and to look within. And that number right there really would have helped us, because we're trying to stay consistent with what was looking in our memo and what the state was talking about at that time. To the next slide. So one of the things, and as one of the good things that has happened with time, is that it allows some things to happen and allows some things to progress. And sometimes when it looks bad, we're able to find some good in it. And we looked at scenarios, because one thing is that we don't want to put an added burden on our staff and teachers, by looking at a reduced calendar model. It is already enough pressure to learn a new system, to have other things going on, and then to add that on top of that would really, kind of hurt morale. So we're looking, to find different ways to minimize that. Second thing, COVID has had an economic impact. And we're looking at not leaning towards certain things that will put that burden on taxpayers as well. And so we also have to consider our operations as far as our different departments. How can we ensure they're operating at full capacity to do their job? Make sure our students are safe, they have the right technology, that we're doing the things we need to do to accommodate the staff, providing proper customer service. So considering these things with a real alignment of minimizing hiring, we have certain administrative positions that are open. And so if we was to look within and to actually realign our administrative staff, we could save about $272,000 by doing that alone, which came out to a good thing. This option would have not looked like this a couple months ago because of some of these things were not available. But as time has passed, again, we find an opportunity to look at this type of model. Next slide. And so tax. In one of the presentations, I presented a lot of trend analysis. One thing that has been consistent year over year is the fund balance has increased. Another thing that has been consistent is our ad valorem tax intake, as far as what we're taking in for revenue, has been steadily increasing year after year. One thing we do in the business and finance department specifically is ensure that we have margin of error built into our particular budget. And that simply means if there's something unexpected happens, we have enough contingency built into our budget to withstand anything that's unexpected. So we was able to move 2% of what we would originally not have budgeted in our ad valorem tax added back to the budget. And this provided some additional revenue for us in order to kind of offset some of that cost that we wasn't expecting. It does not have an adverse effect on our budget at all. This was money that would have been there anyway, but we're just taking advantage of what you all, a taxpayer, has been doing consistently, and that's paying your taxes and really supporting the school system. So that money will go toward bettering the safety of our students and providing instructional support for the Boys and Girls Twiggs County Public Schools. Next slide. And again, through attrition, the salary allocation, if that remains consistent, we'll have that money left in order to, if we don't hire back some of the positions that we got away from due to request or due to the nature of that position was no longer needed, that will also assist in this. And the last slide in this summary, if we're able to do some things for alignment and attrition ad val tax, kind of what we talked about, we can save about $749,000 here. And this allow us to meet our obligations for as our current payments, pay our teachers. We have done a great job looking at different scenarios, minimizing risk, ensuring that everyone had some equity in the game, but it wasn't a burden on everyone. Again, things are constantly changing. Tomorrow, something can be different, and we may have to reevaluate this entire model. But as we move closer to getting more concrete information and improving or presenting a budget that could be worthy of being approved, this is kind of where we stand. So just want to present some information. We promise that we'll update you all as things develop. And this is one of the most recent developments. Any questions or concerns or comments at this time?
Could you give a tentative budget calendar preview of when we will get back into that mode?
Yes. So tentatively right now, next month, we're still on board to look at our taxes. So that's coming forth. And there has been in July originally, we were supposed to either look at approving the tentative budget and or doing the spending resolution. And we did accomplish that last month for July. So considering some of these things, we're in a position of really looking to present a tentative budget, coupled with looking at what the tax digest will be for next year. Those are the next two pressing items. And that should be taking place between this month and next month. And then board requests, just concerns from the community and what we gather as far as our final numbers.
Okay. So you would give us a revised budget calendar, get us throughout that point, to that point?
Yes, sir, I will.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone have any questions? Thank you for looking so hard. Thank you for looking at that and working through those things, looking at different places we can save to not be a burden on our teachers or our taxpayers. That's good.
Yes, ma'am. You're welcome.
All right. With no other questions or comments, that was an information item. And so we're going to, that concludes our business agenda, and it is time to move into executive session. Pending a motion, I entertain a motion to move to executive session for personnel matters.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Ms. Stokes. Is there a second? Okay. Ms. Blackshear, she said that she seconds the motion to move into executive session. Thank you, Ms. Blackshear. All in favor, please throw the sign.
Yes.
Mr. Rouse. So that motion carries. That motion carries, so we shall move into executive session. Okay, we are back from executive session and I entertain a motion to move from regular session to executive session. Excuse me, move from executive to regular session.
So moved.
Blackshear.
The motion's been made by Ms. Blackshear. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Rouse. Okay, so all in favor, please raise your hand. All right, that motion carries unanimously. And Mr. Dixon, do you want to say your statement first, please?
Madam Chair, thank you, Mr. Vice Chair and fellow board members. It was just, we had some discussion in executive session that we had some previous discussion, but I failed to mention in my comments earlier that all extracurricular activities will be suspended during this 9-week period of virtual learning. Since we're not in the building, together, we will suspend all extracurricular activities during this 9-week period.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that, Mr. Dixon. And so in our executive session, we discussed these personnel matters. And the first one will be candidate ID number 4227, home ex teacher of at Twiggs County High School. Is there a motion to approve the hiring of that candidate?
I move that motion.
The motion has been made by Ms. Blackshear. Is there a second?
Second, Ms. Stokes.
All right, Ms. Stokes seconded. All in favor, please, please show your sign.
Harris, Rouse, Stokes.
And Ms. Blackshear, you said yes?
Yes.
And I said yes. That motion carries unanimously. All right. Is there a motion regarding, let me go back, candidate number 1095, social studies high school teacher?
I make that motion.
The motion has been made by Mr. Rouse. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded. Is that Ms. Blackshear?
Back here.
Yes,
Okay.
it is.
Been made by Mr. Rouse and seconded by Ms. Blackshear. All in favor, please show your sign.
Yes.
Okay, that motion carries unanimously. And is there a motion to approve our superintendent's recommendation regarding candidate number 5400, high school math teacher?
I make that motion.
The motion has been made by Mr. Rouse. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Blackshear. All in favor, please show your sign.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries unanimously. And then is there a motion to approve our superintendent's recommendation regarding candidate number 4305, high school science teacher?
I move that motion.
The motion has been made by Ms. Blackshear. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Rouse. All in favor, please let it be known.
Yes.
Okay, that motion carries unanimously. That is carried. All right, and there is a recommendation from our superintendent regarding Title I director. Is there a motion to approve our superintendent's recommendation regarding Title I director?
I made that motion.
The motion's been made by Mr. Rouse. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Blackshear. All in favor, please let it be known.
Yes.
Okay, yes, that motion carries unanimously. And then is there a motion to approve the special ed director and transition services?
Assistant special ed.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Assistant special ed director and transition services. Thank you.
I move that motion.
The motion's been made by Ms. Blackshear. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Rouse. All in favor, please show your sign, please.
Yes.
Okay. That motion carries unanimously. And we had one resignation for EID 2075 retirement from the Transportation Department. Is there a motion to approve that resignation retirement?
I make that motion.
The motion has been made by Mr. Rouse. Is there a second?
Ms. Stokes?
Ms. Stokes seconded. The motion's been made by Mr. Rouse and seconded by Ms. Stokes. All in favor, please show your sign.
Yes.
That motion carries unanimously. And if I'm not mistaken, that concludes the personnel recommendations from our executive session. And with nothing else being said, entertain a motion to adjourn. That's a sign from Ms. Stokes. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Rouse. All in favor, please raise your hand.
Yes.
Motion carries unanimously. Meeting adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you all.
Mhm.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.